Hi everyone, welcome to the TheEdCollabGathering workshop number 11 with Rebecca Rufo-Tepper and Rachelle Vallon from the Institute of Play and Quest to Learn in New York City. They're going to talk to us today about game-based teaching strategies for the student-centered classroom. Please remember to join in the conversation by tweeting your comments or questions to hashtag TheEdCollabGathering workshop number 13, and you'll see that below. Over to you, Rebecca and Rachelle.
Thanks, Kelsey. I'm Rebecca, and you'll see Rachelle. Rachelle's going to disappear for a few minutes while I give a brief introduction, and then I will disappear and she will be back. So we're here today to talk to you about game-based strategies for the student-centered classroom. We're going to give you a little bit of information about what that means, and then we're going to engage you in a hands-on activity. So thank you so much for having us here today. So my name is Rebecca Rufo-Tepper. I work for the Institute of Play. Institute of Play is a nonprofit. We're located in New York City, and we focus on transforming education through play. There's a team of game designers and learning designers that work at the Institute, and if you want to follow us, you can see our handle right there. So we design programs for teachers, for kids, and do all kinds of product development, and the whole idea is to really think about how do you create transformative learning experiences for people. So we have a set of 7 game-based learning principles that Rachelle just put on, and those are principles that derive from games. So we believe that really great learning environments foster these 7 principles in a classroom. So if you'll just take a look at them for a minute, you'll recognize that really great games do these things. We believe that really great classrooms also do these things, and that you can take these principles and create experiences that go beyond just having kids play games. So we'll play a game together and we'll talk about games, but we also think you can really use these principles more broadly to create student-centered classrooms. So I'll just read them out quickly. Everyone is a participant. Learning feels like play. Everything is interconnected. Learning happens by doing. Failure is reframed as iteration. Feedback is immediate and ongoing, and challenge is constant. So hopefully you'll feel a few of these during our presentation today. So just a little bit of background. My name is Rebecca Rufo-Tepper. I am the Director of Programs at the Institute of Play, and I was a New York City public school teacher and literacy coach for 8 years. And I joined the Institute when we started a project to found a school in New York City called Quest to Learn, which Rachelle is going to tell you a little bit about today because she works there and has worked there for many years. Before Rachelle introduces herself, she's going to put her screen on, and then I'm going to disappear for the rest of the presentation today until the end, but I'm still here. I just wanted to say that you should be following, you can tweet. We're going to be asking some questions today, so I'm just going to disappear and remind you all that you can use hashtag TheEdCollabGathering lucky number 13, and then you also can use the hashtag TeacherQuest if you want, because the work that we're doing today all comes from the TeacherQuest program.
Great. So thanks, everyone. I'm Rachelle. As Rebecca mentioned, I work at Quest to Learn. I am the guidance counselor and the wellness coordinator. Quest to Learn is a 6 through 12 school, middle school and high school that is in New York City, and it's been open for about 7 years. And I have also been a guidance counselor for 9 years in total in the New York City system. So I just wanted to overview very quickly what we're going to be talking about and discussing today. We did an overview of Institute of Play that Rebecca shared for you and some of the work that Institute of Play has been engaged in, and I'll share one of their largest projects, which is a little bit about the school, Quest to Learn. We're also going to discuss the game-like learning approach. So what does it mean to incorporate games into the classroom? We're going to play some games, and we're going to share some games that we've created that you can also incorporate in your classroom. And we're going to talk about how to design really effective learning games. And then we're going to leave you with some tips that you can use in your classroom to start to incorporate game-like experiences and play into your content and into your classroom. So I just wanted to share a little bit about Quest to Learn and some of the work that we do. So as I mentioned, Quest to Learn is one of Institute of Play's largest projects. It is 6 through 12. And our teaching at Quest to Learn really is focused around game-based learning and systems thinking. So our teaching model really supports the curriculum through those game-like experiences. And why did we choose to do that? Why did we choose to incorporate the game-based learning? We feel like game-based learning and systems thinking are really great tools that can help students remain engaged in the content, providing them with a need to know. So instead of just turning to page 12, they are understanding that there's a reason, there's a design behind what they're learning and what they're experiencing in the classroom. The other reason why this is important is because these game-like activities are also helping to foster 21st century skills. So we really believe that classrooms need to support students not just in engaging in the content, but also being able to develop certain skills such as critical thinking, problem solving, empathy, collaboration, being able to work with each other, fostering creativity, and being able to learn from other students, and also being able to communicate with each other effectively. So really we want to make sure that we are providing vehicles in the classroom that are allowing students to succeed in these skills, in these skill areas. So research has supported our belief that teaching is really more than just those learning facts. And we've really been able to be successful in this. And one of our major gains has been work that's been done with a partnership through New York University. And they have been in the school for a couple of years now, and they have interviewed students and teachers and parents, and they have observed our classrooms, and their preliminary results have shown that our students really are succeeding in those major 21st century areas. So our students have shown tremendous growth in being able to solve complex problems, to show critical thinking and analytical thinking skills, and also they have demonstrated major growth in written communication and also teamwork and communication with each other. So why overall, when we kind of step back and look at the bigger picture, why are these 21st century skills important? Why should we be incorporating these into the classroom? And our goal as a school, and for most schools, is to make sure that students are ready for college and career. When we look at what makes a student prepared for post-secondary work, a lot of research, such as the one in front of you, show that 21st century skills are at the forefront for what colleges are looking for in students and for what employers are looking for in candidates. So as of 2015, colleges and employers are looking for skills such as teamwork, communication, and problem solving. Those are the skills that are amongst the top traits that employers look for in their candidates. And those are all traits that we are fostering in our model of teaching. So I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca, and she's going to continue and share with you a little bit about some of our extra work that we do with teachers as well in professional development.
Okay, I'm back, and I want to talk to you a bit about the kind of core of the work that we're going to do today together. So one of the roles that I have at the Institute is I have helped design and lead a program we have called Teacher Quest. And so Teacher Quest grew out of the work that we did at Quest to Learn. When Quest to Learn was founded and opened in 2009, it was very groundbreaking in many ways because there weren't as many schools doing design thinking and game-based learning and systems thinking at the core of their curriculum. So we had to create a professional development program that drew from literature, it drew from project-based learning, problem-based learning, and a lot of research around inquiry-based learning, and then blended that with the work that was being done around game design and games and learning, and created a professional development program that would allow teachers to step into the role of designers and understand what this approach really means and give them real skills and practices to be able to integrate that into their classrooms so their students could step into the role of designers. So that program, we run that program not just at the school, we run it across the country, we do online programs, and the work that we're doing today is really from that program. We're going to do an exercise from that program together, but before we do that, one of the things Rachelle and I want to ask everybody is, what does play mean to you, and when was the last time you played? So if you're on Twitter, we would love to hear your responses. I'm going to pause for a minute so you can answer 1 or both of those questions, and then we'll talk for a little bit and we'll return and share some of your responses. So I'm just going to take a little pause. Okay, so I'm going to start talking again. If you haven't had a chance to respond, please feel free to continue to do that. And I'm going to give a little bit of an overview about the sort of more academic definition of play. So one of the things to know about play is that it can be thought of as this sort of state of being. It's this space where what you're doing isn't extremely hard, so hard that you can sort of tune out, nor is it really boring. So one of the misconceptions about play when you talk about play in schools is that people think you're talking about something that's fluffy or just fun and easy. And anyone, and all of us have at some point in our life, been engaged in play, particularly if you look at young children, you'll recognize that they're actually not, they're actually very intellectually stimulated. And so we think that this is a great example of what classrooms should be like. We don't want to create classrooms where people are bored or have things that are so challenging that they tune out. So play is a really great space to really find students' zone of proximal development and be able to create curriculum that is highly engaging for kids of all levels. And the other thing about play that I just want to mention is that you are really, there's some kind of freedom and imagination that happens with play. And so those of you who work in the area of literacy, you recognize that that sort of power of imagination when you're a reader is incredibly important. And it really is can be applied to any kind of content area. That when you're allowed to activate your imagination and step outside of yourself, you're more receptive to learning and you retain what you're learning better, because there's this sort of empathy and critical thinking and all those skills that Rachelle spoke about at the beginning are activated. So there's a number of pieces that have been written over many years, right? And you can go back to Piaget and you can go back to Dewey about why play is so important. And it's not just for elementary skills. I just want to say, kids, just want to say that I'm talking about play for children of all ages and adults. That play really builds your ability to build social and communication skills. It activates the part of your brain responsible for reason and language. And there have been studies recently that show that skills associated with play, especially in the early years, will lead to better academic performance. So we're just going to go to Twitter for a minute and just see some of the responses that you gave and see if there's anything up there that we want to share with the group. And there is a little bit of a delay, I think, so I'm just looking at the Twitter feed right now, and I don't see anything. Let's see. Kelsey, do you see anything up there that anyone's responded to yet? I don't see anything. So we'll continue to watch and we'll just move on with the rest of the talk, but please feel free to tweet. Okay, Kelsey's confirming that we haven't really seen anything yet in response to that. But please feel free to chime in about that, or there might also be a little bit of a lag.
So we're going to talk a little bit about what game-like learning looks like and how to incorporate game-like learning into the classroom. So game-like learning can take on many different forms that either exist in play or a game-like structure. So games are systems that create structure, rules, and expectations. So if you think about one of your favorite games or a game that you like to play, you can pretty much identify right away what the clear goal of the game is, what you need to do to accomplish that goal, and the game usually asks you to take on some sort of role and immerses you in a certain space. Play is free movement that can exist in that game space, and play can also exist outside of a structured game space. And while games always have play within that structure, not all play happens in a game construct. So we believe that game and play are both structures that are valuable in the learning environment. And Rebecca is going to share a little bit about how play and games have existed in the classroom and ways that you can incorporate a very rigid game structure, but also a more free play-like environment.
Great. So I'm going to speak about a few different ways that at Quest to Learn in the middle and the high school we've used games in game-like learning, and we are going to look at one of them more deeply today. So the four main ways that games in game-like learning have been applied to curriculum design at the school is one, through analog games. So having teachers and kids design card games, board games, role-play games, performance-based games. The second area is digital games, so the integration of specific commercial games that already exist or other learning games or platforms, and surrounding those with analog experiences. And then the third area is game-like activities. So it's using those game-like learning principles to create learning experiences for kids that aren't necessarily games with specific goals, but they draw upon those 7 principles. And then the last thing is creating an entire unit of study that is game-like. So I'm going to run through those examples, and then we're going to spend some time today playing an analog game that was designed with a teacher at Quest to Learn. So analog games, I mean, we've all played them. They're board games, card games, performance-based games. You can create an analog game just using human bodies in a room. And we find that analog games are really great things to do with kids because they're highly modifiable and changeable. So when you design an analog game or use an existing commercial game in your classroom, you can immediately change the rules, add components, have kids step into the role of designer because the materials are right there in front of them. The next area is digital games. You'll see a visual here of Dragon Box, which is a math game which can be used with kids as young as 4 or 5, and then it can go up through high school, and it focuses, there's an algebra one, there's a geometry one, and the idea behind the digital games is that there's been a lot of growth, I would say, in the past 5 to 10 years in digital learning games, and really well-designed digital games allow kids to practice, to go deeper into very specific learning goals that a teacher has, and they can be highly engaging and motivating spaces. That isn't to say that every digital game, just because it's digital, should be used. We encourage teachers to spend time playing the game and then doing small tests with small groups of students before you bring a digital game into the classroom. But one of the things you can do with digital games is you don't have to just have kids sit on the computer or the iPads and play. You can have the kids do analog experiences alongside of them. So in this example of Dragon Box, the teacher created a board kind of card version of this game, and so the students were able to play it before and after and modify and design their own version with physical cards. So there's a way you can blend those spaces together. The next thing is game-like activities. So using those 7 principles, you can create activities and experiences for students that allow them to experience those 7 principles in action. So what you'll see here is an activity that a teacher does at Quest to Learn in the 6th grade as part of a human biology unit. This is a cell city project where students design their own sort of city that is a model of a human body cell. So they have like a nucleus and a mitochondria, and they have to come up, they have to move through the design process, and they have to come up with a whole aesthetic for it and materials. So this group did a Lego version. We have had Candyland versions. We've had all kinds of different sort of takes on what this means, and the students have to enter their cell city into a competition. So it's a very game-like experience. It is not a game in the traditional sense, but equally as powerful. And then the last example I want to give is a game-like unit of study. So this is when a teacher takes a unit of study that they teach and they use those 7 game-like learning principles to design an entire unit that feels like a game. So one example I like to give comes from an 8th grade classroom It's an English class, and it's called Point of View. And in this classroom, the teacher decided to do a unit of study on dystopian fiction. And she came up with the idea that she would kind of model the whole unit on the Hunger Games. So she called it the Writer Games, and in the very beginning of the unit, which at Quest we call a mission, the teacher came on the stage, and she had a sort of costume on, which I'll share with you in a minute, and the kids watched a trailer of the Hunger Games that she had edited so that it made them feel like they were being put into this sort of competition, and it was very dark, and they didn't know why they were there in the auditorium, and it was the entire 8th grade class, and they learned that they were going to be participating in, and I think a lot of people here have probably seen the Hunger Games, this reaping, where like she would put them in book groups, and they would have all these different tasks they had to do, and they would do these Socratic seminar discussions, and some days she would have these Socratic crackdowns where like they weren't allowed to do certain things, and so they would really dive into sort of this dystopian world. And so the idea was really through that teacher, her presence and her narrative, and through the hands-on activities she gave the kids, it was creating this sort of game-like environment where it was very playful and people were learning by doing, and they were really engaged in the process. And that is her. Her name's Rebecca, and there she is dressed as Effie Trinket. And so that's when they came into the auditorium after the trailer, she came out like that. And I'm sure you guys can imagine the response. One thing about game-like learning is that not everyone would want to do this, and so we work very closely with teachers and have them think about, you know, what is it that you want to do? Do you want to dress up as Effie Trinket, or maybe you want to do like a TED Talk? So we try to think about what is it that will engage kids and activate the passion of the teacher so the teacher really feels themselves in that designer role.
So we're going to get playing. And if you do not have any tools in front of you, you can take a minute to get a piece of paper and a writing implement, and you will see up on your screen a mind warmer. So we're going to take about a minute or two, and on your piece of paper you are going to follow the instructions that are on your screen, and when you're done you can tweet your picture to hashtag TheEdCollabGathering number 13. So take a few minutes. On a piece of paper you're going to draw out the directions you see on your screen. Okay, so if you are done and as you are wrapping up, feel free to tweet your picture. And I believe Rebecca is also participating, so when Rebecca's done, she's going to show us what she's got.
I did. That's what mine looks like.
Yeah. So I would imagine that as the pictures come in, they're probably going to look a little different. Maybe some might look like Rebecca's, some might look completely different. And when you think about this activity, and this is an activity you can also do in your classroom when you're talking about giving directions and being able to communicate, you can think about what about this mind warmer was challenging for you, what was easy for you, did the instructions help you achieve the goal? And that's going to be similar to a game that we're actually going to play, which is called Picture Talk. So a lot of these activities and game-like experiences are activities that you can implement into your classroom, and we're going to talk a little bit later about how you can modify some of these games to incorporate some of your content. So we're going to get into Picture Talk, and this is a game that was actually created by the Institute of Play in collaboration with teachers, and that several teachers have used in their classroom. And Picture Talk takes on a pretty good game structure that allows it to be easily modified. So I'm going to read the rules of Picture Talk, and then we're going to get started. So the rules of Picture Talk are there is a describer and a copier. So in this instance, you guys are going to serve as the copiers. And again, you're going to need a piece of paper and a writing implement. So the describer is going to draw a card. So when this game is played in person, there is a physical deck, and sometimes the deck may have easy, medium, and hard, and the easy pictures obviously are a little bit easier for the describer to explain to the copier. So the describer will draw a card that has an image on it, and she or he may use any words to describe to the copier what they need to draw. the copiers are not allowed to speak at any point during the game. When all the copiers have finished drawing, the describer will reveal their original drawing that was on the card, and the copiers will reveal what they drew. So we are going to do a version of Picture Talk. I will serve as the describer, and I'm going to describe to you what you guys as the copiers need to draw, and Rebecca's also going to participate, and then we're going to see, and you can also tweet your picture if you guys got it right. So here we go. On your paper, draw a triangle. Then draw a rectangle. Inside the rectangle, draw a circle. Okay? So draw a triangle, I'll just repeat. Then draw a rectangle. Inside the rectangle, draw a circle. So I'll give you a couple of seconds to finish up, and then you can also tweet that picture to hashtag TheEdCollabGathering number 13. And in the meantime, let's see what you got. What did you get, Rebecca?
Have this. It's like when you said under. I mean, I drew a square. I guess that's technically a rectangle, right? So yeah, I think I know what it's supposed to be, and like now that I've seen it here, I think if I was going to redo it, I think I know what you were trying to describe.
Yeah. So let's see what it was actually supposed to be.
Okay, let me get that up there. It's so good that I didn't look ahead.
Yep. So it was supposed to be a house. So again, when we're participating in this, you can think about, and this is a conversation you can have with your students in the classroom, what about the way the describer was talking? So what about the way that I was talking either helped you or hurt you to be able to draw this image? Was I not giving clear directions? Did I not specify the direction or where on the paper your shapes were supposed to go? And what was it like for you as the copier, not being able to talk or ask clarifying questions? So this is an awesome activity to do when you are teaching expectations, and when you're learning about communication, and being able to show empathy for others. So we're going to play Picture Talk again. As I mentioned, this structure is very good for modifying, and we're going to stick with the same rules of Picture Talk with one describer and copiers, but this time the modification or the change we're going to make to the game exists in the things that you can or cannot say. So Rebecca is going to serve as the describer this time, and myself, I will be the copier along with you guys. And Rebecca is going to describe, but she cannot use any word that serves as a directional instruction. So for example, she cannot say, draw a triangle on top or above the rectangle. So again, you can take a piece of paper and a writing implement. Rebecca's going to be the describer, and we're going to get started.
Okay, and I'm going to leave those, you're not going to see me, I'll leave those constraints up there so you can yell at me through your screen if I get it wrong, or you can just go, ah! I usually do 3 strikes if we're in person, but you can do whatever you want. Okay, so here we go. Draw a rectangle that is longer than it is wide. At this, okay, at the center of that rectangle, draw a circle that is 1 to 2 inches from each edge, and then within that circle place another circle that is slightly smaller. It's really not easy to not say inside. I'll say that. Okay, and then to the northeast corner of that rectangle, draw a similarly shaped rectangle, but small, like it was a ice cube sitting in the northeast quadrant of that rectangle. Okay. I think that's as good as I can do.
Okay. So we'll take a couple of seconds. You guys can tweet your photo, and I think I'm ready to show mine. So this is what I got. Is that close?
That is, yeah, that is close. So I don't know what that means, that you're a good listener or follower along, or if my directions were just superb. I'm an excellent communicator. So there you go. So that's what the card
Awesome. Yeah. So actually, I would say that you are a good describer, and this is not because I have played Picture Talk before, but another conversation you might want to have if you're doing this activity in your classroom is to start to talk about how the modification changed the game. So Rebecca will talk a little bit later about the design process, but when you are designing a game or a game-like activity, when you are iterating and thinking about changes you want to make to your game, you can ask the play testers or the participants, what about this modification made the game more fun or more challenging or easy or hard? So in this case, I guess for you, Rebecca, how was it as the describer to not be able to say directional words?
It was a little frustrating because I just wanted to say inside or to the left side, but I think, like, I was trying to think of creative ways around that, like the northeast was, to me, so I think if I had had more time, I would have thought about other kinds of strategies to use. But it was kind of fun. Like, it made me really think, which I liked. Like, it wasn't just describing shapes on a page.
Yeah. And I think for me as the copier, I think you did a really good job with being able to give specific directions. And even though that modification probably was harder for you, I think you were able to find creative ways to instruct me so that I had a clear understanding of what I needed to draw. So Picture Talk in general, as I mentioned, has a pretty set structure, and similar to what we discussed previously, a game exists in a set structure that has clear rules and clear expectations. So in the talk structure, there is a describer, as I mentioned, and there's the listener or the copier. And in this particular structure, the describer can communicate while the listeners cannot. So that one structure expectation in this game is a limited communication. And underneath the structure of this game, there are inherent learning goals. So you want every game-like activity or game that you're implementing in your classroom to have some sort of learning goal. And we'll talk a little bit in a minute about how this game in particular can bring in learning goals that have to do with your specific content. So in this particular version of Picture Talk and in the Mind Warmer, the learning goals have to do with communication, being able to give clear directions to the participants. It also is measuring listening. How well are you able to follow directions? And it fosters empathy. And in other versions of Picture Talk, where there may be two people working on one drawing at the same time, it can also foster collaboration. So in different modifications of Picture Talk and different versions of the talk games, there are other types of games that we've created that teachers have used that foster the learning goals in their particular content. And in these specific examples that you see on your screen, they're all related to math standards and math goals. But you can take this structure and implement it in your classroom and possibly implement learning goals in whatever your content is, whether it's math, science, or social studies. So I'll run through very quickly just to give you an idea. Another version of the talk structure is block talk, and block talk actually uses physical blocks that the doer in this instance is building a 3D structure based on what the describer is explaining. And that learning goal has to do with order of operations, or PEMDAS, and also communication. And the other two versions are graph talk and equation talk, which also use paper and pen or pencil. And some of the learning goals in those structures are learning how to graph on the X and Y axis, solving equations, and learning about diameter and radius. So again, when you're creating a game or a game-like activity, and Rebecca will give you some tips on how to do that, you want to use and rely on previous structures that are easy to manipulate and modify, and that are easy to implement your learning goals for your content. So we're going to talk about and think about how you might adapt picture talk, as I mentioned and as I suggested, for use in your classroom. So we're going to take a few minutes. You can tweet your response again to hashtag TheEdCollabGathering number 13. And based on your content and what you teach, think about how you might use this game, picture talk, in your classroom.
Yeah, I'll just say I already saw Emily Freeman was tweeted out that she uses pattern blocks, which reminds me a bit of the block talk example that we were just talking about, which basically is using pictures of the blocks on a card, and then the kids have a bunch of blocks and a folder, so they can't see what, you know, the describer can't see what the student is building. So yeah, and I think thinking about the kinds of materials that you already have in your classroom is great. Like, do you have blocks? Do you have spinners? Do you have dice, pipe cleaners? At the Institute, we've seen all kinds of great picture talk mods, which use like really creative materials like string. I've seen like a physical version of it. So we'd love to hear your ideas if you have any about how you might use this in your classroom. Okay, so continue to tweet and tweet afterwards as well. We always love to hear the different picture talk mods people come up with and how you might actually have kids modify picture talk. And I will just say for a minute, because the ones we gave are all math, like ELA teachers that I've worked with have often thought about how you could use picture talk in a way where it's very much about describing a setting. So for example, if you had a snowman picture on a card, you might really evoke this sort of moment around that snowman with the snow falling and it's cold and there's hot chocolate and I'm wearing a hat. And so you can use it in lots of different ways. So if you had an idea about how you wanted to use picture talk and you said, I wonder if I could use it this way in my classroom, the first thing we would say, and to use this game or any game, or if you were going to design a game from scratch, is to always begin with thinking about what is it your students need and what is it that you want them to kind of gain from this activity. So in game design or any kind of design, empathy is a huge part. You know your user. And if you're a teacher, I mean, for users, really your students, that's who you're designing your curriculum for. So think about what they need. Is it collaboration, communication? Is it a specific content area skill around literacy or numeracy? But identify what that learning goal is. What is it they should understand, know, be able to do? And then you can think about a game that you've played that already might fit that. So for example, we've had a lot of teachers modify games like Taboo and Categories, and math teachers have used things like poker. And then there's also all those kinds of performance-based games, like there's a game called Werewolf. I don't know if anyone's played it, but I love that game. And so I've seen a teacher who is teaching 1984 use that game to talk about sort of suspicion and paranoia and those kinds of things. So if you think of a game that already exists, that's the easiest space to step into a game designer role, like modify something that you feel like you could tweak so that it would meet your needs. And then the third step would be to work with a team. We cannot stress this enough, and like Rachelle and I designed this presentation together. Like anytime we do design-based work, it is very important to find a partner, somebody you can work with to test ideas together. We believe collaboration is core to creativity and innovation. And you and your partner will move through the design cycle. So you'll empathize with your users, the students, you'll define your learning goals, you'll brainstorm what you could do, you'll prototype, so you'll make cards, You'll take the materials and work together, and then you'll play test it. You'll bring in kids to really give you feedback and tell you what they think about it. And then when you're ready, you might bring it to your full classroom. And if you want students to do game design, you can use this same cycle with them. And the reason why we have teachers move through it is because we think if you are an adult and you want kids to use the design process, you have to first feel very comfortable with that process on your own. So that's why we, in our programs, Teacher Quest program, we always have teachers design their own games. And whether you use the game that you come out of it with or not, it's almost like secondary to the fact that you've gone through a process, and that process empowers you to do more. So we were just going to go back to the question if anybody had ideas on how they might use Picture Talk in their classroom. And there are a few pieces of feedback on the Twitter feed right now. We shared the one about pattern blocks, and some people talked about how they really love the idea of using analog games because they're so modifiable. But I don't see any specific ideas that we can share right now, but I encourage you to keep an eye on the Twitter feed and see if there's any things that pop up about how to use Picture Talk, because we believe your best resource is actually each other. So on that note, we're going to wrap up today. If there's any questions that you have that you would like Rachelle and I to talk about during the last 4 minutes here, please tweet them to the TheEdCollabGathering number 13. And if you tweet something and we don't get to it, we'll try to keep an eye on it and respond to you later if we don't see anything now. But these 7 principles, I just want to return to them because we really think that these are the things that we want you to walk away with today about how to create student-centered classrooms using games and game-like learning. It's not about whether you're using a game, right? That's sort of secondary to the idea that you're creating these experiences for kids. So we put them back up here as a reminder of that. And then I'll just put this last slide up. We have a lot of free resources on our website. So if you are interested in learning more, please feel free to go to the website, or you can follow Institute of Play. If you're specifically interested in the Teacher Quest program, just in case that's something that you're curious about, there is the website for that program. You can sign up for our newsletter where we're going to talk about the workshops and programs we'll be running this summer. And you can always email us. So I will stop there and just thank everybody so much for being part of this today. And it was great to have Rachelle here. I'm going to stop. Well, maybe I'll just leave my screen up for 1 more second in case anyone needs to write that down. We did have a question that came in, so we have 2 minutes left. So one question that came out of here was what skills do students need, and then modifying a game. Oh, this is a comment about just how you would use the design process. So yes, that's absolutely right. Someone named Elaine wrote that in, is you think about what are the skills students need to have, and then modifying a game is a great entry point.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think we're ready to end there. I'm looking again. Kelsey, did you see anything new that popped up? No, right? Okay.
Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you guys so much also.
Yeah, great. Enjoy the rest of your sessions.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Rebecca and Rachelle, for that amazing discussion about the importance and benefits of games and play in our classrooms. If you would like to continue this conversation, please tweet at the TheEdCollabGathering number 13, or you can use the hashtag TeacherQuest like they said. Please check out the upcoming presentations for session number 4, and thanks for listening with us today. I'm going to screen share hopefully. And these are the upcoming presentations for the next session. And again, thanks for listening in. Bye, everyone.